Test pour le streaming. Est-ce que tu me reçois Là, je parle dans le micro. Je ne vais pas parler 2 heures. Et tu ne contrôles pas. Hein. On est d'accord. Hein. D'accord, Thierry. On est d'accord. Mais moi, je vois que ça module partout. Là, c'est bon. Ok, alors là, je fais un test micro. Je vois que ça module dans tous les sens, là. Bien, bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Voilà, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Mesdames et messieurs, you're welcome. Ok, super. Bah, tu vois, attends, oh.
Donc ça, on laisse tourner.
One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, 9 countries that will be receiving certificates this afternoon.
Thank you, delegates. It's with great pleasure that we arrive at this moment where the hard work of all the country teams that have been participating in control programs in the ground, on the field, in offices, in laboratories, across the whole of the veterinary services in many cases. And then, of course, the hard task of compiling dossiers, answering the questions of first the Status Department and then the Scientific Commission for Animal Disease itself, as we apply our very rigorous process of ensuring that our award of official status is lined up with all the information requirements and the epidemiological criteria that appear in the international standards that the OIE's World Assembly has set. It's a very high bar, and so it's with great pleasure that we proceed to award these certificates to the following countries. The first of the countries to be awarded official recognition certificates during the OIE General Session, the 87th OIE General Session, is Bolivia, in recognition of a foot and mouth disease-free zone. Many of us enjoyed the warm hospitality of our Bolivian friends and colleagues, so it's with great pleasure that we welcome the delegation to the stage. The next country that I would invite to the stage is Botswana for recognition of an FMD zone. I would like to welcome to the stage Croatia to receive your certificate in recognition of your PPR free status as a country. Pes Petit Ruminant, free country. Our next country recipient receives 2 recognitions, official recognitions. The first for bovine spongiform encephalopathy, negligible risk status, and also for classical swine fever, a zone free from classical swine fever. I welcome Ecuador to the stage. Now we would like to welcome to the stage, in recognition of 5 further zones of foot and mouth disease, Kazakhstan. The next OIE member to receive recognition of classical swine fever freedom is Latvia. And now we welcome to the stage and congratulate on their status as a country free from contagious bovine pleuropneumonia, Peru. We would like to recognise the official risk status for bovine spongiform encephalopathy, negligible risk for Serbia. And finally, in recognition of both contagious bovine pleuropneumonia free status as well as classical swine fever free status, we welcome to the stage Uruguay. Now, in no way detracting from the achievement, I need to correct a mistake I made earlier. We recognised Ecuador for bovine spongiform encephalopathy controlled risk.
I also made a mistake. I only handed Kazakhstan 1 certificate when they actually had 5. My apologies. I think it's time for a video. Thank you very much. We're on time. We'll break now for coffee and resume at 4:30 with presentations from 5 industry bodies with whom the OIE has cooperation agreements. We'll hear from the International Council for Game and Wildlife, the International Feed Industry Federation, the International Egg Commission, the International Meat Secretariat, and the World Veterinary Association. So we look forward to seeing you again at 4:30. Thank you. Thank you, and welcome back to the final session for this afternoon. And as I had flagged earlier in the day, we will now have some presentations from international organisations having signed a cooperation agreement with the OIE. We'll have 5 presentations, and the presenters have kindly agreed that they will receive a question if you have a question. Otherwise, I will ask a question, and they would prefer that you ask a question than I ask a question. So please think about making a comment or providing a question. The first presentation is from the International Council for Game and Wildlife, and the presenter is Dr. Torsten Morner. Thank you very much, Dr. Morner.
Forward. Oh, there. This one? Yeah. So, Mr. President, dear delegates, dear colleagues, I will talk about the International Game and Wildlife Conservation National Council, an old organization founded in 1928. The French name, Conseil International de la Chasse, we have kept the acronym for CIC, and it's an international NGO. We have the headquarters in Hungary, in Budapest, which is outside Budapest, and that's our origin country. We are a very strange organization because we have state members, we have association members, and we have individual members. But we cover most parts of the world, and we have 29 state members. You can see them in blue, and we have 45 associations from all kinds of different type of hunting, and we have 1,600 individual members. And we are the only global hunting organization. There are hunting organizations on the national level, and here in Europe we have a federation of hunting associations called FACE or FAS, but we are the only organization that exists in all countries. And our mission is a word that value and support sustainable hunting for the benefit of people and nature. And our mission is we promote on a global scale sustainable hunting as a tool for conservation while building on valued traditions. So we are found in the tropics, we are found in the Arctic, we are found everywhere. And all wildlife is of interest. It is true that if you manage your land because you would increase your game, all other animals gain from this. We create wetlands, we create parts where wildlife live. We are a member of CPW, Collaborative Partnership of Wildlife Management, where also OIE is a member. And this is the United Nations, IUCN, all different organizations where we try to talk over the borders with different stakeholders. We have different interests: forestry, farming, diseases, game, and we meet regularly and discuss wildlife issues. We have a General Assembly every year, and wildlife health is a very important thing for us. Healthy wildlife means also healthy people, which I think everyone in OIE can compare with. We have 3 divisions: policy and law, which work with all the political items about hunting, ammunition, and things like that. We have the culture division, works with producing books, films, but also arranging concerts, museums, and other things. And we have an applied science division, where I am head of the specialist group, wildlife health and game meat, and we work with disease issues. We also work with game meat, which is very important. OIE and CIC signed in 2011 a memorandum of understanding, and has since 2011 been working together. And in 2016, we had a cooperation agreement between OIE and CIC to establish a Center for Wildlife Health in Bulgaria, in Province, Bulgaria. And this Wildlife Health Center, we arranged meeting, a training course for hunters. We were about 50 attendants. Half of them were hunters, half of them were veterinarians, most often the focal point of wildlife veterinarian from a country. We focused on East Europe, the Baltic states, Poland, Czech Republic, and these countries, since we then had an outbreak of African swine fever. We came up with recommendations and produced a book, which you can download at this address. We covered communication, hunting, feeding on wildlife, biosecurity, a lot of different things that we have to communicate and educate the hunting community. And there has been different meetings, and this is a very important meeting. We have a TAIEC workshop in 2018 in Bulgaria, where the Commissioner Andrea Kitis said, because of the outbreak of African swine fever, that one of the most important players in this fight is the hunters. And why is that so important? Well, hunting is not always, in the modern world, regarded as a very good thing. We kill animals, and we have a lot of animal welfare groups that are strongly against all kinds of hunting. So officially, we couldn't receive money from the European Union. We were not an acceptable organization for getting support. But this has changed, and I think if we look on combating African swine fever, we need to work together very closely. And the hunter community is prepared to take part in this. But hunting is not always the same, and organizations. We can say we can have local, regional, national, and international organizations or associations. In some countries, hunting is forbidden. In other countries, every hunter has to be organized and member of a hunting association. So that differs from 0 to 100%. And when we come to national level, we have some countries that have very good organization of the hunters, while in other countries, the hunters are totally unorganized. So if you want to communicate with the hunters, that is very, very difficult. And then international, we have 2 organizations, but of course, we cover only a little proportion of the hunters. We have about 7 million hunters in Europe, and of course, they are not organized, all of them. But we are prepared as an organization to help. I saw on ProMed, was it yesterday, the OIE statement on combating on a global scale, have a strategy together with FAO to fight and try to eradicate African swine fever. This was possible with the help of hunters in the Czech Republic. They had an outbreak, and after 1 year where they fenced an area of 6,000 hectares, and they eradicated the wild boar population there, and they eradicated the African swine fever. So the Czech Republic is today officially regarded as free of African swine fever. And as a representative of the hunting associations, I said, yes, we are prepared to take our part of the work and do as best as we can. That's all I had to say. Thank you for your attention. Any question?
Any questions or comments? I had a question regarding the training manual that you showed there. Does that include zoonotic disease training for hunters? I'd expect that hunters have more exposure to certain zoonotic diseases. Is that considered in the training?
Do you mean the recommendations or what?
The report and recommendations from the training course.
I think it focused very much on African swine fever, because that was the hot topic. But of course, exactly as you say, we focus on biosecurity. And I think we have a big mission to bring the message to the hunting community about zoonotic diseases, yes. And that's 2 different things. The African swine fever virus, we have it in the cold Arctic, and it's a very, very, very long time in the carcass. A totally different epidemiology than what we have, for example, in Spain. And so there's much more difficult biosecurity measures up there. But of course, the zoonotic issues is a very, very important issue. Yes, and we work together with OIE and the Wildlife Disease Working Group there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your presentation, Dr. Morna. Any other questions or comments? It was indeed because of African swine fever that we asked for this presentation, and the role of hunters in detecting through passive surveillance or their exposure to wild pigs the disease. So that's very much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our second presentation this afternoon is from the International Feed Industry Federation, Alexandra de Afayad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perhaps you might like to correctly pronounce your name.
Yeah, so it's Alexandra de Ataíde in Portuguese. I'm from Brazil, but de Ataíde for the Anglo-speaking. So anyway, for me, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you again to the OIE for inviting us to speak. I was here last time 5 years ago presenting IFIF. Are the slides up? Sorry. Yeah, okay. So I'll be speaking about hunting now. Okay, so just a little technical issue here. So again, thank you everyone, and good afternoon to the governments, my colleagues, and the colleagues up there. We've been here all week having very interesting discussions. In the 10 minutes I have here, the idea is really to talk about our organization. As you know, we have a cooperation agreement with the OIE, but it's really focused about working together. And as we address all these different issues, you can't do it alone. We have to do it as a chain, and we have to do it with governments to address critical issues. So for those that don't know IFIF, or maybe you remember from 5 years ago, we are an international organization and we represent the animal feed industry globally. We were established 32 years ago, and we are made of national and regional feed associations, corporate members, and feed-related organizations, and all of our members represent 80% of the global compound feed production worldwide. Here, just to give you an idea, we split it up, but you'll see on the top is the national and regional associations, and this covers all of the Americas and Europe, Japan, China, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and so on. And those are the ones that represent the 80% of the global compound feed. But we also have very important members, which are corporate members, which really bring expertise to the table. And this goes from the compound feed to additives and as well as pharmaceutical companies. And they are the base of our corporate members, but we also have feed-related organizations like the rendering, the pet food, and also machinery and Buehler. So together, you might ask, what is it that we try to do? So our vision is to have one global voice for our industry. And this is to provide leadership, represent us, and promote our industry as a participant in the food chain that provides sustainable, safe, nutritious, and affordable food for a growing world population. I always like to put up the slide because some people wonder, well, what does this represent? So the global animal feed production represents over 1 billion tons. We've reached the 1 billion ton mark a couple of years ago, and we're worth about $400 billion. So you'll see there, and also the breakdown of the countries or where it's produced, but I'll show that later. The evolution of the compound feed, you'll see Brazil, the green line on top, and this is just to show the evolution over the last 15 years. So Brazil, you see an increase, China as well, and Europe, and then the US. But why is this significant? It might be no surprise, because those countries are really the 4 countries that produce about 60% of the compound feed globally. And of the compound feed produced globally, you might know this, but half of it goes into poultry. So you'll see there, and then the breakdown. So aqua is about 4%, feed 26% of the global compound feed goes into pigs, 20% into ruminant, about 45% to poultry, and others about 5%. So what is it we do with all this, and what is our industry, and what does IFIF do in a day-to-day? Well, we have a very big challenge, which is about sustainable feed and food. We can't work alone, so how is it that we all work together to meet the increased demands of consumers, given the increase in the world population and feeding the world by 2050? So what are some things we work on? We work on sustainability, work on education, best practices, and international standards. I chose for this audience here today to really focus on 4 points. So we do work on facilitating dialogue with regional and international industry bodies and government regulators as yourselves. We also provide input to feed standard development. We work with Codex on feed safety, and we also work on risk management and capacity development. And in the end, our aim is to strengthen communication along the whole chain. So this graph here, I'll just pause for a second. So you'll see IFIF is somewhere right there in the middle by itself. Again, on the bottom side, you'll see the private sector. So this is, again, our membership, the regional corporate members, feed-related, and also the other chains like meat, poultry, egg, and you'll hear some of them speak this afternoon. But in the end, IFIF then has a voice in working with the global groups, like yourself here, the OIE, where we've had a collaboration agreement since 2012. We also work a lot with the FAO. We have a memorandum of understanding with them. We do work a lot with Codex, the WTO, and the WHO. So that's how we work along with the partners along the chain. So on the first point, with expert dialogue at regional and international level. We every year have the International Feed Regulators meeting, and this is in cooperation with the FAO, where we do bring feed regulators from around the world related to feed to meet with the industry. And we talk about issues that are relevant for both government and industry, again, working together and addressing those challenges together. And there you can talk about capacity development. We talk a lot about AMR. We talk about Codex. We talk about risk assessment. Anyway, so some of those issues, and we do that every year. And we also have a Global Feed and Food Congress every 3 years. We just had ours in Bangkok in March, where we did have the pleasure of having the OIE there to speak, and about how feed is also inserted into the OIE context and terrestrial codes and the work you do here. So we do that every 3 years. We also provide input to feed standard developments. So this is with the FAO, the WTO, WHO, OIE, all the acronyms, but you know it all, I don't need to spell it out. And we collaborate to help set effective international regulatory standards for the whole feed chain. And what is our aim? And you ask, well, where's the industry play part? Well, really, our aim is to harmonize the regulatory framework for the production and commercialization of animal feed globally. But more importantly, also, we are ensuring its safety and access to markets, and based on these standards or recommendations that come up from bodies such as the OIE and Codex. So we do follow what OIE does, and looking at the Terrestrial Animal Health Code, Chapter 6.4, looking at the control of hazards of animal health and public health. There are parts related to feed. We do look at those and ensure they're implemented. Working with Codex. So Codex, why Codex? We always think about food, and what we always try to remind them that feed is part of food. And that's an important message I like to say all the time. So it is a chain and working together. So we do work with Codex. We do participate in their different committees. There are some committees that we've been more active on lately. Again, try and take into account the animal feed sector in these discussions. So there's the Committee of Contaminants in Food. They're looking at a code of practice in prevention and reduction of dioxins. We're involved in that. Also, Committee of Pesticide Residues, looking at MRLs and revision of classification of food and feed, and residues of vet drugs in foods, MRLs as well, so we're involved in that. And we've also been very engaged in the task force in AMR and providing the comments from the feed industry point of view. Another very important thing, besides looking at all these codes and standards, we also find it very important and within IFIF about risk management and good practices. So one of our pillars of work is really looking at education and best practices. And what we've done is we actually published in 2004 a feed manual together with FAO, which is really the manual on good animal feeding. Well, the Codex code, and then we did the manual on good practices for the feed industry. And this is really with the aim to increase safety and feed quality at the production level. We have taken on this manual. We have done training courses in developing countries, such as Nigeria, Tanzania, and Ghana. And this is really on the implementation of the code. And this is really to help, again, the production level in terms of safety, quality, and as it goes along the chain. What I'm pleased to say also that we will in the next weeks launch an e-learning program on feed safety, putting this manual into practice so people can access it and use this to be able to see if you want to produce feed, what are the minimum requirements, and you go through a whole training and you get a certificate. So we will be launching that sometime in the next weeks, I hope. So that said, I said in the beginning that we do have a cooperation with the OIE, which we really appreciate. This was signed actually in 2012, so it's been almost 7 years. This agreement is really to facilitate, obviously, and strengthen the cooperation, hence the word cooperation. But what are we looking at? We're looking at the prevention and management of infectious diseases, and we're trying to support the development, updating, implementation of your standards and guidelines, and also very important, strengthening the linkages between feed safety and food safety. And so that's really the focus. When I already talked about the terrestrial code and other things, and maybe supporting the development of standards and guidelines, but now in my last two slides, I really want to talk about, well, one is about the prevention and management of infectious diseases, and what we're doing as a feed industry, but then I would like to talk a little bit, just briefly, on animal nutrition, which is something I think is important to speak about in this room. So, I know all week we could talking about African swine fever. You all know better than me, the transmission and vectors of transmission. We as a feed industry, we are contributing to biosecurity through good practices along the feed chain. We acknowledge we have a role to play in this prevention and transmission of diseases. But it is, as we all know, it is a shared responsibility. You can't do it alone. So we are committed to biosecurity measures. At the local level and regional level, they are being, again, updated, and we're going within the industry and along the feed chain to ensure these measures are put in place. And this goes from selecting, receiving, and processing of ingredients into complete feed until the final delivery. And we have to work, as I said, with all the chain actors and stakeholders to ensure, of course, that we can slow down or end the spread of infectious diseases. On my last slide, another big topic for everyone is really looking at, I hear a lot, talking about what are we doing to implement and reduce AMR. From the feed industry point of view, we feel we do have an important role to play, and it is really about animal nutrition. We're always talking about treating diseases, and that's very, of course, important. That's what we're about here. But when we look at animal nutrition, I want to say that that is an important contributor to promote animal health and welfare. So I'd just like to hear the word nutrition more. It is through feed formulation and feed processing and access to new technologies, nutritional innovation, that we can really support animals have good health with high resilience and capabilities to stressors. And you can see this from three sides. You can limit exposure to stressors through feed safety, which I mentioned. You can improve the nutrient digestibility and availability, particularly with micronutrients for the animals, and it favors proper gut functioning and health microbiome. So with better nutrition, healthier animals. So with that, thank you very much for your attention. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Alexandra. You were particularly invited because of African swine fever and the concerns about the spread of the virus through feed, but also because of our interest in antimicrobial resistance and the possible contribution of feed and medicated feeds to that issue. Are there any questions or comments in relation to the feed industry? On those topics, I wondered we're largely chief veterinary officers and largely chief veterinary officers here and regulators. What do you see as our role? Should we stand back and allow the industry to self-regulate on these issues, or do you see a need for greater regulation?
I see a need for collaboration and working together, and whether it needs to really discuss what drafting and how the industry can contribute also, because we are the ones that then have to put it in the market. So, but I don't see it's regulating. It is really about going together and doing the work. So, if there are questions and want to know because we read a lot on the news sometimes, what the feed industry is doing, I mean, it's not silos. It's really, in the end, we are part of the process, and sometimes people forget really what even feed is about. I'm not saying everyone here, but you're talking about this part, and feed, it is along the chain. I mean, with Codex, they talk about food, feed is part, and I think we're all in it. So it's about public-private partnership. It's about looking at different ways we can collaborate. So.
A very good example of public-private partnership, I think, and I think you made the point about contributing to the food chain very well. Benin, thank you.
Merci. Je voudrais savoir si le programme de formation en ligne dont vous avez parlé, est-ce que c'est ouvert à tous les pays? Et si possible, quelles sont les conditions?
Ici, c'est possible de quoi, au fond?
Si c'est ouvert à tous les pays,
Oui.
quelles sont les conditions pour y
Ah, les
participer?
conditions. Okay. So thank you for your question. So first, it's open. It's available to everyone. The way we're doing it, so since we're launching it in the next 2 weeks, we're seeing the best way. But for government officials and for regulators, there is no cost to using it because this is really part of our commitment in trying to help. When it comes from the industry people using it, that's a different thing. So you would just access the website and you sign up saying you're interested in what agency you're from, and then we just give you the okay and the code and you go ahead and you can do the course. So it would be public available in that sense. So for government and for also developing countries, so feed millers and feed on the ground, they also would be, it's so free of charge as well for the developing countries.
That's excellent news. Thank you, Gabon.
Bien, merci et félicitations pour votre présentation.
Merci.
Je voudrais savoir pourquoi est-ce que la part d'aliments réservés à l'aquaculture est si faible, juste 4%, alors que nous savons que dans le monde, l'aquaculture représente un fort potentiel de développement.
Agriculture, no? Yeah. So that's also I'm getting good questions. That's also a very good question. Yeah, that is actually where you see the growth in feed and going into agriculture. We have been really looking at the protein side of animals. We haven't been really involved in aquaculture feed. It is something we do talk about, but there are other organizations that are involved in representing that. So, but it is something we talk about that we should, as an organization, be addressing issues more from the aquafeed side. But again, and from logistically, I mean, these organizations are big and we have a lot of members, but I always like to remind them as well in terms of organization and people, it's really just myself and one more person and we run IFIF. So it's really what our members really choose. We have to really decide where we can really focus our efforts and priorities. But your point is very well received, I understand, of course.
Thank you very much,
you.
Alexandra.
Thank
Your
you, sir.
willingness
It's
to
more
answer
time.
questions and
Yeah.
certainly to
Thank
provide the training course at no cost to government. It's not often there's a benefit in being a government official, so thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again, everyone. Yeah, see you later. Bye. Thank you.
Third presentation this afternoon is from the International Egg Commission, Kevin Lavelle. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks very much to the OIE and to the Director General for inviting us to come and present the work of the International Egg Commission. We are a farmers' organisation representing farmers primarily, and we represent by volume slightly more than 80% of all the eggs or the countries that produce the eggs in the world. And that's partly because, as with many forms of agricultural production, only a few countries deliver so much. Where do I find that one? We've been working with the OIE for more than 20 years, long before we had a formal partnership agreement. And we've been doing a lot of stuff on standards development wherever there was an opportunity with the OIE, and we hope, of course, to do it for at least another 20-odd years as well. My presentation has fewer words, so I hope you'll have to just listen to me and rather than read. And this one, hopefully all of you, certainly in government, would know the Sustainable Development Goals. Partly because the IEC International Egg Commission is a farmers' organization, we chose in our recent strategic plan, or most recent one, to structure quite a lot of the work that we do based on the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, simply because most egg farms are family farms and very little of egg production is corporate. So in a number of other animal industries, we see the world in a slightly different way, and maybe that's why it's easier for us to work with the Sustainable Development Goals. we would be the fourth largest of the animal products industry. So not the biggest, but big enough. And we don't make up so much of your feed consumption, but certainly a fair bit. So how do we do this? How do we get involved? And there are two main ways that we do it. As an organization, we have a development foundation which does quite a lot of work and getting more and more work in primarily developing countries, where we do as much of the work as we can that suits not all of the goals, but some of the goals. But perhaps the most obvious thing to state is that the egg, the humble egg, is the nutritional standard against which all other proteins are measured, whether they're plant or animal. So simply by using the eggs, we are helping, or producing eggs, we are helping towards the achievement of some of these goals. So this slide has only two words, trusted and partner. What does that mean? I mean, if you're going to be a partner, you have to do something. The OIE calls organizations like ourselves, all of those speaking today, partners. So that means you have to do something. And we feel that we have done quite a bit, and I'll discuss in a moment some examples of things that we have done over the last few years and are doing at present. And I guess to be trusted, we have to be a reliable partner, and that's what we'd like to demonstrate to you by giving a few examples of things that we've done in the last few years. In common with all avian industries, avian influenza has been a deep-seated problem, and in many countries has been a crisis at different times in the last 15 years or so. So a number of years ago, the IEC decided, after discussing it with the OIE, to establish an avian influenza expert group. And not everybody on the group is there, but there's some well-known names: Dr. David Swain, Professor Ian Brown, Professor Arjan Stegeman, the OIE's own Dr. Alessandro Tierman, industry experts and farmers. And we get together a few times a year and discuss what are we going to do that can actually deal with both the spread, the control, and the management of the disease. And the first real output that came out of this was a practical biosecurity checklist, which I'll discuss with you in a moment. But we also prepared a discussion document on vaccination, which in the field of avian influenza is a highly contentious subject, and obviously punted a lot by certain interests. And to understand if we are going to use a technique like vaccination for avian influenza, what do we know, what don't we know, what are the gaps, what are the priorities? And that's a discussion document for more government and regulator use. So I want to just talk about what we did with this practical biosecurity checklist. This was a way for us to provide a document that can be used at farm level by farmers to either improve, in many cases, or in some cases, to establish the basics of biosecurity. It's premised on the OIE's terrestrial code standards. And in very simple terms, it's farmers who do things and implement things. It's governments who regulate what farmers do. So how do we get farmers to do more? It's available free. You don't have to pay for it, Mark. It's on the IEC website. And it's currently in Russian, Chinese, Spanish, Portuguese, English. I've left Spanish. And we can add other languages if there's enough interest. It comes with a sort of toolkit of other materials that if someone wants to do, train the trainer. By putting this together, I think there's a link somewhere on the OIE website where you can find it, otherwise you can find it on the IEC website. We hope to not only deal with biosecurity of egg production, but also help the OIE in one of its other key target goals, which is antimicrobial resistance, because simply spoken, if you improve biosecurity, your need for antimicrobials is reduced, and hopefully the negative impact of AMR and the One Health concept is much reduced. What else have we done that can make us a trusted partner, in our view, and which we would hope to be seen? We've established a global traveling egg school, which is going around various countries in the world, starting off Mozambique, to try and deal with things like production, to deal with biosecurity, to deal with animal health, to deal with animal welfare. It's a service we provide to countries and to producers or regions that actually ask for such a service, It's not something to be sold, it's just something to be funded, and we do it as part of our outreach, primarily into developing countries, which is, of course, where most of the animals of the world are and most of the people are, which I'm sure you all know 87% of the world's population live in the developing world. And that really is all that I wanted to say. There's lots more I can answer if you have questions for me, but I know that you're going to ask the first one.
I always like free. Are there any questions or comments for Kevin Lavelle? My question or comment was in relation, you have attended the session this week, and I heard that the avian influenza chapter is of keen interest to us and bringing that forward for adoption next year. And then in the following year, we've got a technical item looking at on-farm biosecurity and industry QA programs and how they might contribute to food security and business continuity. So I appreciate your comments on how the industry contributes to the animal health and welfare objectives of the OIE.
Well, one of the difficulties when it comes to avian influenza is, if you go through the biosecurity checklist, a lot of it is fairly basic for the simple reason that the scientific data on the actual transmission mechanisms, how it gets to a farm, is actually not as clear-cut as we would like it to be. So a lot of the work that needs to be done from an industry point of view is precautionary rather than known preventive. That means that you've got to encourage people to do things that you're not 100% certain of yourself that they'll work, but you do know it's better than doing nothing. That's the message that we've got to get out to producers. What we've also got to get out to producers is that it's not one disease. When it first became an issue within the various bird species, it tended to arrive as a low pathogenic form and then transition, and now it's actually moving around in the highly pathogenic form directly. But both are happening at the same time. So in one region, you could well actually have to have two different approaches depending on the particular the sort of risk profile of that country. So to answer your question, yes, we will definitely be commenting. We will definitely make submissions, and we will try and assist. But we also know that it's not as straightforward as possible. Though our industry is much smaller than the broiler industry so far, avian influenza has tended to be more a disease of long-lived birds. In other words, it's our industry and the breeders within the broiler industry that are at more risk. But that's a technical thing because there's no actual biological reason why short-lived birds can't actually also suffer the disease. There's enough time within the growing cycle, and there's no maternal immunity that comes through. So we're not anti, for example, vaccination. We just don't believe that the vaccination strategies that currently exist are satisfactory from a control point of view. They can be part of an eradication strategy. And that's why we prepared this vaccination document, which we have circulated as widely as we can. It's on our website, and we would hope that CVOs look at something like that and challenge it with pleasure, because that actually, in terms of your request for the chapter that's coming next year, is what else can we do that can change the nature of this disease. It might well be that in this room, at some point, a discussion on whether stamping out should be considered the main form of control is, I think at some point in the future, and it's not for me to be definitive on this, but I think you're going to have to debate amongst yourself whether that's an appropriate response to a disease of this nature, which is becoming more entrenched in various parts of the world.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Côte d'Ivoire. Thank you.
Merci aux conférenciers. La Côte d'Ivoire est un pays où la production avicole est en pleine expansion. Donc, elle est beaucoup intéressée par cette question. Elle est intéressée par la checklist dont il vient de parler. Mais surtout, il a parlé de la campagne qu'ils peuvent mener dans les pays en développement. Alors, je vais être vraiment pragmatique. La Côte d'Ivoire est intéressée par cette campagne. Comment est-ce qu'on peut formuler cette demande et quelles sont les modalités? Merci.
All you need to do is to get onto the International Egg Commission website and respond to the info address. Alternatively, you can contact me directly. My contact details are on the delegate list that all of you have for this session. So if anybody has any questions, including those from Côte d'Ivoire, please do send them directly to me, alternatively to the general response address.
That's a very generous offer. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Our fourth presentation this afternoon is from the International Meat Secretariat, Mr. Xin Huan.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I'd like to first thank the OIE for this opportunity to speak. Yes, that's the one. Just wait for the slide to come up. So we are the International Meat Secretariat, and for us, our organization is about livestock producers, whether they be national associations or even some of our members are government ministries, and it's about the promotion of sustainable production in red meat, which we define to be the bovine species, pigs, and sheep meat. So the main species. We started life as a trading organization, but really, as you very well know, these days, what we are really concerned about is sustainably feeding the world. And that's, of course, a much, much larger topic that encompasses many, many topics. We do work with the international organizations on these topics, and so we have official representation in the main UN organizations, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the OIE, of course, the Codex Alimentarius, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, with the UN Climate Change, and many others. And so I want to, these days livestock is really in the media, and in developed countries, unfortunately, much of that attention is not so positive. So what we, as an organization, want to really stress is that we are part of the solution. We are part of the solution to many of the important questions that are challenging us in the modern world: the environment and climate change, sustainable development, human health and nutrition, food security. And as veterinarians, as animal health professionals, you know very well that livestock is really an integral part of these discussions. Okay, so the international collaboration, of course, comes in the form of official representation. Thanks to our representation around the world, we are present in about 30 different countries. It might not seem like a lot, but that's the 30 countries that are collectively producing about 3/4, 75% of global red meat production. And our joint activities include scientific symposia, conferences. We are also present in many working groups as official observers, and in this capacity contribute comments to draft documents, and for example, in the work of the OIE, the earlier draft codes on animal welfare, we have participated, have invested quite a lot of time in providing input to these working groups. And of course, we like to think that in so doing, we are also part of the solution to the development of standards and the improvement of existing ones. Okay, so let me just sort of go even a little bit more big picture and just talk about the aspect of working together. This was mentioned by many of our colleagues in previous presentations. We are all part of the livestock or animal protein chain, so starting from feed to the different species. And I would just like to say that on behalf of all of us, livestock provide many contributions, and many of these contributions are, of course, important to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Well, I've gone maybe a little bit too quick. The UN Sustainable Development Goals are about, well, it's about a couple of things, about feeding a growing population, but also about maintaining or optimizing the health of our populations through adequate nutrition. And so this is one of the really important contributions of livestock, is that there is actually a very there are very interesting nutritional contributions that livestock and animal source proteins bring to the table. And so contrary to the popular opinion that there might be out there in the media, we cannot feed the world just on plant-based proteins or whatever. We will not provide adequate nutrition for proper development for young children, for women, for elderly, through just plant-based products. But working together, livestock and plant-based products make very good complements. And so I think that in terms of the contributions that we are making, you as health professionals, the private sector as the sector raising livestock, we can continue to be proud of the livestock sector, and we need to think of a world in which we are actually part of the solution and not just be considered as part of the problem. Thank you very much.
I was waiting for you to raise the veggie burger, so good of you to do that. Any questions or comments to the International Meat Secretariat? You highlight the increasing demand for protein, but also the increasing expectation around animal welfare and sustainability. My understanding is that your Secretariat is represented in many livestock producing regions, but not all. So how do you extend your membership and coverage?
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for that question. That is, of course, is a big challenge for us as an organization. The reason we are present in so few countries is because these are actually precisely the countries where we have well-developed livestock production and distribution systems. The countries where we are very poorly represented or not represented in at all are the developing countries, the countries where there are still many challenges related to production and to distribution, to the storage, to countries that sometimes lack cold chain facilities. And so that is a big challenge. But indeed, this is something that we want to work together on, because you cannot just think of a future in which there is a producing region of the world and a consuming region of the world. Livestock bring many benefits to environment, to livelihoods, to economic development, and these should be shared as much as possible around the world, depending on the natural resource endowment, the climatic conditions. We want to see livestock in every corner of the world possible. So this is indeed something that we want to work more on.
Good luck with that challenge. We have many developing countries here with very strong livestock sectors. Senegal, thank you. Can we get the microphone to Senegal in the back row?
Merci, je le félicite, Monsieur le Président. Sinon, une petite question. Pourquoi le choix de la viande rouge et pas la viande blanche?
Excellent question. There is another organization that takes care of white meat. It's the International Poultry Council. So that's the institutional answer. But basically, I think you're raising an important point here. And this was a point not foreseen by our organizational founders 40 years ago. That was a world, it seems like it was a world where things were simpler. And if we were to do things, redo things, maybe it would have been wiser to have united all of the meat producing sectors, so we wouldn't have to discuss whether you were a white meat or a red meat. You know, I often get a question about is pork white or red meat? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavours. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And the final presentation this afternoon is from our good friends at the World Veterinary Association, Johnson Chung. Thank you, Johnson.
I'm afraid I'm not able to get the next slide up. I may have turned it off.
Mr. President, respected delegates, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Many thanks for inviting the World Veterinary Association to have this presentation to share the update information of the WVA. WVA is an international, non-governmental, professional veterinary organization. In 1863, Professor John Kimchi initiated the first International Veterinarian Congress in Hamburg. Until right now, WVA, over 155 years, represented over 500,000 veterinarians through its 97 member associations across 6 continents. His member is from Veterinary Medical Association, International Association of Veterinarians, and also observers. The mission is based on veterinary education through advancing and developing veterinary medicine to assure and promote animal health and animal welfare and public health globally. In practice, the WVA unifies the veterinarian profession worldwide, connects veterinarians with other health professionals, also supports the veterinarian profession in delivering its responsibility. WVA is committed to the One Health concept. For approaching the concept, WVA highlights the concept and highlight the teamwork under 5 strategy priorities. These are veterinary education, zoonotic diseases, animal welfare, pharmaceutical stewardship, and organizational growth and partnership. Besides the teamwork, WVA definitely believes that veterinarians, physicians, ecologists, and many other professionals have to work together to reach optimal health of the people, animal, and the environment. Therefore, WVA collaborates with relevant global partners on various One Health issues. Furthermore, WVA actively promotes the veterinarian profession worldwide through the different ways, actions, activities, and the cooperation, such as from the Global Veterinary Network, publication of the position statements, articles, and the press releases, advocacy and the technical advice, collaboration with global partners, and also collecting data through the World Veterinary Day to promote the veterinarian profession, and through the global event and congress, and we also have the online continuing veterinary education portal. Regarding the cooperation, I would like to show you some examples. Since 2016, WVA, in collaboration with MSD, to conduct every year a veterinary student scholarship program to provide a 5,000 grant to select students from countries in the region of Latin America, Africa, North Africa, Middle East, and Asia, Oceania. WA and the SIVA Animal Health create in 2016 the Global Animal Welfare Award with the aim to recognize and reward veterinarians who has provided outstanding and exemplary welfare-related service to animal owners, hostile fellow veterinarians, and the public. Since 2017, we have issued 17 veterinarian and 1 student champion in animal welfare. Of course, a very important cooperation is with OIE. WA and OIE had a memorandum understanding in 2002, and we revised it in 2015, and this year, 2019. The agreement focused mainly on the issue of One Health, good governance of veterinarian service, veterinary education, veterinarian professional skill training. Under the MOU, there are many activities and achievements. We did a survey in 2018 to create a global repository of the available guidelines for responsible use of antimicrobial in animal health. We and Health for Animal project on better veterinary knowledge, field skill, and access in Sub-Saharan Africa with the support of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We contribution the OIE report on antimicrobial use and the IACG document on antimicrobial resistance. In the past 10 years, from 2008 and 2018, WBA and OIE issued the World Veterinary Day Award together. WBA prepared together with OIE, FAO, and the WHO to host the Global Summit on One Health issue. We also participate and present the WA activity on different issues during OIE Global Conference. For the further information of the collected data I just mentioned in 2018, we survey on action to reduce the emergency and the spread of antimicrobial in animals to create a global repository of available guidelines for the responsible use of antimicrobial in animal health. We got 34 complete questionnaires covering 57 countries. For the future, next step, we will investigate further the guidelines provided to the collect metadata to build the global repository. Of course, the other important activity is a global summit with the support of the tri-parties. In summary, WVA and the OIE cooperation agreement emphasize the importance of a strong public-private partnership, wherein the OIE and the WVA are complementary and create synergies for achieving their mutual goals and objectives. WVA is happy and continuously looking for the impact and contribution to the global veterinarian and the One Health. Welcome all the veterinary association organizations from the non-government professional group to join the WVA. Thank you for your attention, and feel free to contact us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chiang. Any questions or comments for the World Veterinary Association? This year, the theme for World Veterinary Day was the value of vaccination, and I hosted an event in Australia, and I know events were held elsewhere. And one of the issues that emerged for us was in the human health sector, there's concern about vaccination, and we're seeing communities who are refusing vaccination for whatever reason. And it seems to be emerging also in the animal sector. I wonder if you have any thoughts on how we might ensure the continued use of vaccination, both for its public health benefits, but also for its animal health benefits.
Actually, in World Veterinary Day, we have promoted different themes, and this year vaccination is our theme, and it's very important. And we have the co-joint statement with the World Medical Association to terminate the rabies. So I think in 2030, so the vaccination is the most important tool to achieve this goal. And we promote all the profession under our association, and we deliver the fact sheet guideline and to highlight and emphasize the vaccination as importance. So I think through the cooperation with international organization, we have to promote the vaccination. It's a very important issue, and we want to achieve it, particularly in the rabies termination.
No, it's a very, very good example. A world without a rabies vaccine would be very frightening indeed, and we have such a cost-effective tool for combating that One Health issue. India, thank you.
See, we are talking of issues like AMR or other things which are going to affect the people who will come to this world in times to come. So I think one area where we should work more is the veterinary education, where like India has a very old tradition of treatment using herbs, where no medicines are used. So those kind of things, if we can include in the curriculum for the vets and the paravets, then it can, at least for 16 medicines, we have made standard operating procedures which can be used. So that will help the AMR directly. And secondly, even for the world exchange, you see, we have the largest population of livestock in the world. But the participation in the world activities of, we are a developing country, so it does not happen naturally. So you definitely, like the meat secretariat works on the countries who are exporting meat. But we have livestock, and our people should be involved more in these activities because our number of veterinarians is also very much larger. So the impact will be much bigger. So if you involve with countries like India in the activities of your World Veterinary Association.
Thank you. I know Johnson and I both attended the Commonwealth Veterinary Association conference held in India earlier in the year, where the issue of herbal therapies was one of the topics discussed. But Johnson, would you like to comment?
Thank you for your comment and about the herb medicine. And actually, we have this proposal in our General Assembly in this Costa Rica, but we also concern some efficiency, and currently we have not the standard how to use the herb. So, but personally, I believe that in the future, I think the herb will be reduce the antimicrobial resistance. They can have some impact or contribution. But in the future, I think that WVA is very welcome to have the more conversation and also have the some conference in India, to cooperation with your sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johnson Chiang and the World Veterinary Association, for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we thank all of the industry partners for their presentations of the work of their associations and councils, and that is the end of our session today. A reminder that we have a kind invitation from the delegation from Uzbekistan for a function this evening that will be held on the ground floor and in the gardens outside. So we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you once again, and we'll see you tomorrow in this building tomorrow. Thank you, at 9 o'clock. Oh, I have one other mention, sorry. That one's in French. That was the reminder. It is only for delegates at 9 o'clock. So the Friday session is for delegates only. We'll see you here at 9 o'clock. Thank you. $8:30. Really? On a Friday? Oh, okay. So you need to be here at 8:30 to register, and then we'll start the meeting before 9. So 8:30 on a Friday for the delegates only. Thank you.
Sir, tomorrow the meeting for delegates is in this room, here in this room.